I was a sociology major in college. I started out as an English major. I got on campus, people would say, "What's your major going to be?" And I'd say, "English." And they would say, "Ooh. Ooh." I didn't know what that meant until my third semester when I failed British Lit. I could not understand Beowulf. I didn't understand a word of it. I didn't understand a word that the professor said. It was just terrible. I failed the course. And so I defaulted into sociology, which I discovered when I got there, two things. A, sociology was for students who were smart enough to get in college. And B, nobody in the social department ever made the dean's list. I almost made it. I came real close. One time. But I love sociology. It was made for me. And I remember one introductory course that I had. I still remember that this famous sociologist at the University of Chicago back in the 20s and 30s, famously gave forth 4 wishes, motivators, 4 wishes of every life. They're pretty basic. They make more sense than Beowulf, I can tell you that. All right? What would those 4 wishes be? What are the 4 basic things that make up a human life? Well, love. That's not a surprise, is it? We all need to give it. We all need to receive it. Everybody, without exception. Recognition. We all want to be seen as worthy of what we do and who we are, that we are okay, we are acceptable. People look at us favorably. We want to be recognized. The third one is new experience. Now, I saw a video this week of a famous movie star who had a birthday and he had never bungee jumped. Okay? So he wanted that new experience. And the camera showed his face. He was in a helicopter over the Grand Canyon and he fell backwards out of that helicopter into the Grand Canyon. Now, that's not the kind of new experience I have in mind. You know, for me, maybe for you, new experience is a different thing on the menu or cooking a different recipe on Friday night. That's new enough, but we all need it. There they are. Love, recognition, new experience. Oh, there's a fourth one, isn't there? The fourth one is something you know very well. You're born with it. It never goes away. You need it every day of your life until you're gone. And the fourth one is security. Actually, it's so foundational that unless we feel secure, we're not able to love. Unless we feel secure, we don't need a new experience or want that. Security is basic. We all need to feel that we are sufficiently at some minimal level that we're safe, we're secure where we live. It's not surprising, is it, that the psalmist, as we go through the 150 Psalms, returns to that theme over and over again. Our security is in God. In God alone. Only in God's hand. Only in the embrace and love and care of God do we find our true and lasting and adequate security for our lives. So the psalmist returns to that theme over and over. You're familiar, of course, with that 23rd psalm. It's a different metaphor, but it's the same meaning, where the psalmist says, even though I walk through the valley, the shadow, death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. The rod and the staff, the rod protects, the rod guides, the rod shows the way. When the shepherd is at our side, we are safe. We are secure. So this psalmist who wrote the 125th Psalm said, those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken. The security of trust in God. Someone has said that Jerusalem is a city in a saucer of hills. The psalmist looked out and saw the saucer of hills, saw Mount Zion, saw Jerusalem sitting in those hills and said, that's what it's like to be in God's presence. It's to be surrounded as Jerusalem is surrounded, that's how the text goes, by hills, so the Lord surrounds His people, both now and forevermore. In God, we are safe. We are secure. God surrounds us. God protects us. God guides us. The shepherd is with us. But we get tested, don't we? We get tested because life is difficult. We get tested because the very things that we think we can't live without are the things that we often find we have to live without. Life is difficult and hard. And sometimes we feel as if we can't hold on. We don't feel safe. The challenges, the temptations, the difficulties, all that we have to face in life impinge upon us, and we get tested. Some days we're up, sometimes days we're down. Some days we're full of faith and promise, and other days we are gray, feel hopeless. Someone called this saber-tooth faith. Or not saber-tooth, but sawtooth. One day we're up, one day we're down. One day we're up, one day we're down. Like a thermometer going up and down. Life will test us. Some people say or think that ministers live secluded or something of a life apart from real life, that we don't live in the real world. Just the opposite. We see everything. We see everything. We bury babies. We walk into the burn unit of hospitals covered with our gowns to stand there next to those who've been so horribly maimed. We stand next to the parents of a fallen soldier, a kid 18 or 19 years old, at the funeral in the gravesite, and they play taps. We hear the stories of brokenness and rage, sorrow. We see everything. We see everything. And so does the psalmist. As we walk through these 150 Psalms, he sees everything. And he lets us know that we are not alone in our struggle, that anything that you have tasted, anything that you have experienced, everything that has happened in your life, the psalmist knows it and picks it up and prays for us in whatever need we have. The psalmist says, As Jerusalem is surrounded by the hills, so we are surrounded. How do we believe that? How do we continue? How do we hold on? As you know, I grew up Baptist. We only baptized one way. I've told you that Presbyterians baptize three ways, and by the way you looked at me, you thought I was crazy. No, Presbyterians actually do baptize all three ways. But in growing up Baptist, we only baptized one way. I can remember the baptisms so well. We would gather on Sunday night. The baptisms were always on Sunday night. And it was time for the baptism. The lights would be turned out except the baptistry, which the choir would be behind the pulpit and the baptistry would be up high over the choir. And the lights were out except in the baptistry, and the minister would walk down the steps in his white robe into the water, and the choir would sing a hymn. It was always the same hymn. It was never a different hymn. It was always the same hymn that they sang. And I remember one of those verses that goes something like this. Just as I am, though tossed about by many a conflict, many a doubt, fightings and fears within, without, O Lamb of God, I come. Isn't that a picture of our lives? That's who we are. Doubts, yes. Sometimes we have them. Conflicts, yes. Fightings within, yes. Fears and fightings within, without. That's a picture of who we are. The life that we live. It's never on an equal, level plane. It's a struggle. It's difficult. How do we make it? We make it because we're being held, not because of what we are. We can be a mess in any given day. It's not how strong we are. If it were a matter of how strong we are, we would all be without hope, wouldn't we? It's not what we are, it's who God is. It is God's presence that surrounds His people, like the hills that surround Jerusalem. It is God's work who never lets us go. We choose, in the face of a difficult life, to believe that. We choose that. It's not how we feel. It's the choice that we make to believe that God is at work in our lives, will not let us go, and that we will be more than conquerors. What an amazing thing. You're probably thinking, what do you mean, more than a conqueror? I'm barely holding on. I can barely get through the day. And here, the New Testament is pronouncing, we are more than conquerors. It's not us. We're more than conquerors because of what God is doing, how God is holding us, how God is renewing us. It's God's work in our lives. I read the New York Times every day. And the thing that I skip across a lot of stuff, but what I never fail to read every day in the New York Times is the obit section. Not because it gives, details, born, died, and so forth. No, the New York Times obits, it's an expanded essay every time. It's worth the price of a paper every day. It's a story about someone who's died, who's had a remarkable life. And it's always fascinating. It's always interesting. Movie stars, scientists, tycoons of industry, sports heroes, writers, all these people. And they give the stories. And I can't wait to read them every day. This past week, there was an obit on a man by the name of Henry Ballneck. And he didn't do anything special. His life had no special thing about it at all, except for one thing. He survived. So Henry was born in Poland. He was Jewish, and you know the story about what happened in the 1930s and the great roundup of Jews all across Europe and what happened to them. This 15-year-old kid, Henry Ballneck, was sent to one of the camps and made into a bricklayer. And because he was laying bricks, and that was so important, he was well fed and he was well taken care of. The obit has 3 pictures of Henry, who died at age 92 in Buffalo, New York last week. 3 pictures. The first picture is Henry on a bicycle. He's 18 years old. He's just gotten out, the war is just over, and you look at him and he looks as strong, as healthy, and as vigorous as any 18-year-old you've ever seen. Obviously, laying bricks was important. He was well fed. He looked great. The second picture of Henry was a picture in 1949 when he had his picture taken so he could immigrate from Europe to the United States. Handsome man, full black hair, big smile, suit coat, sweater, shirt with a collar. And the third picture of Henry was last year when he was 91 years old. Boy, would I like to look like that when I'm... Sally, he looked almost as good as you. Full head of hair, 91 years old. This big smile, his real teeth, all straight and beautiful. Twinkle in his eye. The best looking 91-year-old man you've ever seen. Why did they run his story? Maybe because of what he said to the Buffalo News newspaper last year when he was 91 years old. He said, as he told his story, which is a remarkable story. It's a remarkable story of survival. You know, he became a bricklayer. The war was ending. Hitler had already committed suicide. The war was just coming to a close. And they put him on a ship in the Baltic Sea. And they were taking these prisoners somewhere, who knows where. And the British thought they were Nazis trying to escape. And so the British planes bombed this ship with all these prisoners. And here's Henry in the water. And he's going down for the last time. And somebody reaches out. A friend of his reaches out. Takes his hand. And then he lives to be a vigorous 92-year-old man. But what he said to the Buffalo Times was that he didn't believe in God. He said, how could there be a God with all of my people being killed? I don't believe in God. He said what he believed in was luck. What he believed in was luck. So he gets to be a bricklayer and is well fed. That's luck. A hand reaches out to him in the waters and pulls him to safety. That's luck. He lives to be a vigorous 91-year-old man, full head of hair, beautiful smile. That's luck. And the rest of the people, the rest of us, tough luck. Tough luck. Can you think of any more cruel vision of the world, of life, than that? A world where heaven is empty, there is no God, and we live in this world either good luck or tough luck or no luck. The psalmist's understanding is that we are held by the hand of God. And terrible things may happen to us, and do happen to us. And difficulties and trials of life, they happen to us all. But we are held. We are surrounded. We are loved and cared for. And so the New Testament picks that up as our reading today. And Paul says, nothing can separate us from the love of God. Not anything, not anything, not anything, he says. Demons and life and distress and things present and things to come. All of these things, it doesn't matter what happens. We are held. We are more than conquerors, not because we're strong, but because God is. This is God's work, not just ours. We may be miserable failures. We may be weak. We may just be making it from moment to moment. But we are more than conquerors not because of us. This is God's work. This is God's promise. He will surround us as Jerusalem is surrounded by the hills. So God surrounds His people. In one of those same camps that Henry was in, a child, I suppose a girl, had written, and they found it after the war was over. They found what she wrote on the wall. And this is what she wrote. I believe in the sun, even when it's not shining. I believe in love, even when I feel it not. I believe in God, even when God is silent. And so do we. Praise be to God. Amen.